When it comes to sports,
let's stomp these dudes.
Together they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa! Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist will get ready to go on a Monday. First Monday after the first week of the NFL, at least for most games, besides the two tonight, and it was fantastic. We're going to get into all that later on in the show. Ton of stuff to get to here today. We have about 10 hours of content here in 2 hours of time, and we're going to try to squeeze in as much as possible. But the best news of the day out of Oklahoma State, Jason, as I bring you in, I'm sure you would agree with this, is that Coach Mike Gundy saying that Oklahoma State right now, football team, 0 positive COVID tests. That's a good sign as we are in official game week right now.
Yeah, we do need to emphasize active cases because, for all we know, there could be some guys who, they're out of that parameter, but they're still, having to work their stamina back up, or, because we don't know, and now the Big 12 is mandating cardiac testing and stuff like that, if anybody's been impacted by that. But as far as having COVID in the system actively right now, it is 0 for football. Total for the entire athletic department, it's only 11, and then only 4 in the fall sports, and it's all in women's soccer. So that's significant. And but I also we have to be cautious because that's good for Oklahoma State. But as I mentioned last week, we also have to make sure that Tulsa doesn't have another outbreak, between now and Saturday, and potentially derailing this game that we were hoped to today would have been talking about that game.
Yeah, I'm thinking that basically it all relies on Tulsa right now, and that's kind of where we are with this. Is as long as they can go through another week and not have too many issues, like you said. Hopefully we can get to kickoff, which, again, 11 a.m. on Saturday on ESPN, so we look forward to that. Something else Coach Gundy mentioned today, Washington State transfer. He thinks Tay Martin out of Washington State is going to have a lot of opportunities coming up on Saturday. We'll see an extensive amount of snaps in Week 1. How encouraging to you is that to hear that we got this transfer here at Oklahoma State, but he actually seems like, at least according to Coach Gundy, he will be a significant threat with these wide receivers.
Well, and he did reference getting that extra week because Tulsa wanted to postpone. Certainly helped someone like him as well. But, I asked the questions about Martin, and, because we found out last week that he was granted immediate eligibility. The fact that I asked him, coming from a Mike Leach offense, how much that helped. And he said it was huge. He even, he joked that obviously Mike Leach's offense is actually built around OSU's, and when actually in reality it's the other way around. But no, I mean, he talked about, so a lot of the jargon and whatnot within the system he already could pick up because he had 3 years in a similar offense. So I think that's huge. I think that made it easy transition for him, and probably one of the reasons why you look at because, he transferred. That was the tough thing, was he transferred in the middle of fall practice. So most guys, if you're going into a new system, you're entirely learning from scratch, you might be saying, okay, maybe week 2 or 3, he starts picking it up. But yeah, Gundy straight up, and that was the crazy thing, is most of the time you're not willing to say, he's going to play significant minutes. You don't want to show your hand or whatever. But it was already we feel comfortable with him, and obviously he had success at Washington State. And it's no surprise to me because we saw a grad transfer wide receiver come in last year and help that wide receiver core. But it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him if because you go back to last year, even after Tylen went down, the wide receivers were able to produce, but they didn't put up big numbers. The Tylen Wallace still finished with the most catches and yards despite missing the last 5 games of the year. Will a talent like him come in and maybe supplant somebody to where you're now looking at it and saying, Tylen Wallace, Dylan Stoner, and Tay Martin are this 3-headed monster, and now it's no longer just focusing on Tylen Wallace.
And you give another weapon to Spencer Sanders to utilize. I mean, I think that's part of the bigger picture here is getting him even more comfortable knowing that he has an extra option here and there coming into the season. It's going to be big time for him. This is, I truly believe this. I'm not sure what you think about it, but with an extra week to prepare for Tulsa, I think initially it was the idea that Oklahoma State's players, they have to ramp down, right? They were ready to go. They had this date in mind. We talked about the importance of these reps were coming towards this goal starting at this time. Well, then things shifted, and they had to go an extra week, and we get to that mindset of how much can you possibly practice and focus on one team, right? So when you get to this point, you have an extra week. But with all this coming together now, and hopefully getting to play on Saturday, I could see a situation where I know the Big Ten was awful this upcoming this past week. The Big 12. Sorry, the Big 12. I got the Big Ten on the mind because we're going to talk about them too. The Big 12 was just awful. But when we come back into this week, I could see it with the extra week of preparation for Oklahoma State and all the good news we're hearing with coronavirus testing. I know we have 2 more days to test this week. But with all that into place, I'm not shying away from a possible blowout situation here. That's just where I am.
Well, and he also mentioned, besides the preparation, that there were some guys that health-wise maybe would have been questionable if they were able to play this past Saturday, that he's like, that getting an extra week to rest up some of the bumps and bruises and maybe twist ankles and whatnot, that some of those guys are going to be in doubt now this weekend. So, yeah, I mean, everything he said, sounded like they gave them pretty much almost the entire weekend off. I think they might have practiced Saturday, but I think he said Friday and Sunday, and then obviously today, which Sunday and Monday are typically days off for them. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a case where, he even mentioned that there wasn't like they weren't downtrodden at practice. It wasn't oh man, we were supposed to play this week.
Yeah.
He was like, from practice, it just still felt like the same kind of fall camp feel. After they learned, Monday night that the game wasn't going to be played last week. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is preparation and obviously health. Because, yeah, I mean, I actually, just finished up my story for the news press referencing those 2 things because of the fact that, you had, Big 12 looked awful. Iowa State loses to a Sun Belt team, embarrassed by a Sun Belt team. Yeah. Kansas State loses to a Sun Belt team. And then Texas Tech nearly loses to a team that got blown out the week before. So it was just, and it makes you wonder, why, maybe those teams just aren't as good. Preparation, I know at least Houston Baptist. I'm not sure if Arkansas State and Iowa State, Louisiana, if they had already played games before, so had that advantage. But I think that's going to be the benefit for Oklahoma State, though, is Tulsa hasn't played anybody. So we know for a fact that it will be kind of more even ground when it comes to that. And then we also have to keep in mind that Tulsa was kind of the one already at disadvantage before the lack of practices because having to shut down for a week and a half.
Yeah. Let's hit the phone lines. You're on the afternoon sports drive. Go ahead, caller.
I was wondering that if the reason that Iowa State and K-State got beat is who had the experienced team? Who played last year together? In that there wasn't the practice over the summer. There wasn't spring practice. So the people that were more experienced playing together, I thought they had the definite edge on this past week's game.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Certainly possible. A lot of it going into it as well is we talked about that there are some teams, we talked about this before, but there are some teams in college football that you can pencil down week 1 no matter what's going to happen. When they have those non-conference opponents on the schedule, it's like, that's a win. And I think a lot of people did that initially with Iowa State, with K-State too. but how much of it was Iowa State and K-State dealing with everything that went on this offseason, not knowing if they're going to play, all these new things that went into it, and then the same mindset they had was, we got this team, we got Louisiana, we got Arkansas State on our respective schedules, that's an easy win. And then they go into that game, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, maybe we should have actually done this a little bit better in practice. Maybe we should have actually focused a little bit more and acted like this was a better opponent than we anticipated. I think a lot of that played into it of, we're still the better team. No matter what happened this offseason, no matter how much we prepped or didn't prep, we're going to come in and wax these guys, and that's absolutely not what happened.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that Iowa State game, but I'm just, I don't have the time, but I would like to look and see who is more experienced, because they definitely had to jump up this year. That's why I really like OSU's chances, because so many of the guys played together.
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge no matter what. Yeah, even without these losses, the fact that Oklahoma State had all their experience, a ton of it coming back, that's what I'm saying. You just add that into the mix of, there's no reason that this Saturday should not just be an absolute blowout. I'm talking halftime. This game should be over.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Appreciate it. Would you agree with that, Jason?
I just got reconnected to the timeline, so I actually got a phone call for work, so I didn't catch any of that.
No, you're fine. The caller said she thought a lot of it had to do with the experience that comes back last year from K-State and Iowa State, and which had the more experience and all that, including the teams that they played, was a factor in the losses. But saying that plays in for Oklahoma State, and I said I threw that into the mix of everything we talked about for the reasons Oklahoma State could win. And I really don't see any reason why this upcoming Saturday the Cowboys don't have this game handled by halftime.
Yeah. Well, and I think also you look at the Iowa State game, we also have to factor in that, arguably their best passing attack option was out for the game in Charlie Kolar. He was the preseason All Big 12 tight end. As I mentioned to a friend on Saturday, that would essentially be like taking out Tylan Wallace, and then your next best wide receiver is someone who's on the walk-on squad or whatever, like this practice squad. You don't have a Dylan Stoner or a Tay Martin to fill in that gap. Like, they had nobody outside, really in the passing game to think of outside of Charlie Kolar. So I think that was also a big thing, is if you know that their top attacking wide receiver / tight end was going to be down, you could focus in on trying to slow down the run game, which I think they did pretty well with that as well. And then obviously, it made it difficult for Brock Purdy because he couldn't get in a rhythm because the one guy that he has the most rhythm with was sidelined. Yeah,
and the other part of it too is why it was somewhat inexcusable is the fact that Cyclones gave up 2 special team scores. They gave up 2 returns for touchdowns against Louise. Like that can't happen. Those are things that you have to have not being a part of what's going to be allowed from your special teams in week 1, no matter what happens there. So you allow those scores. You only manage 14 against that defense. That's a really, really, really bad look. But yeah, like you said, Brock Purdy obviously couldn't get into a rhythm. I think a lot of people were looking at Iowa State as sort of a dark horse right here with Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Well, I got to tell you, that was about as bad a loss as we've seen in the opening weeks for anybody. And how good, too, do you have to think for instance, for Arkansas State? Or pardon me, we'll get to them in a minute. Louisiana, their first game of the year, right? They come in on the road in a brand new season, and they hop into a ranked opponent. And they say, you know what? We don't even care. We don't care that we even got to this point. We're here ready to beat you like we would any other team. And the fact that they came out on the road and got that victory, like there's people that say, oh, you should be giving the Big 12, should be hyping up their teams. No, the Iowa State Cyclones went in there cocky, ready to go, and I think unprepared and got their heads handed to them.
Again, I don't know. I'm not sure when Charlie Kolar went down, during the week. Again, if that was going to be a big part of your game, that's something you have to factor in as well. I don't know if cocky's the would be something I think would be the case with them, because if in reality you just don't know. You're going into a game that nobody knows what's going on. You're in the middle of a pandemic. I think it's going to be one of those, because here's the thing we got to keep in mind, I think you're going to see a lot of these weird games like this year, because of the uncertainty, whether it's injury or COVID. Because that's the thing is because even Gundy brought up today the fact that there's still 2 more tests that have to be taken for Oklahoma State before Saturday. So while right now there's 0, by Saturday there could be several, and some of the guys that you were putting into your game plan may suddenly get sidelined. But I think what's more impressive for Louisiana is I think they had 8, I think is what I saw, 8 starters who were sidelined with COVID last second, and that they still end up getting the win. So maybe it was a motivation on their side rather than on Iowa State's, just thinking, we're going to beat them no matter what. And Louisiana maybe taking the approach of, we gotta fight for our teammates who aren't able to play type of mentality.
Regardless of whatever the reason was, they were the better team the entire day. And if you watch the entirety of that game, there was no question that Iowa State was second best on that football field that day. The fact that, and we'll get into the K-State loss here when we come back, but the fact that a couple of those teams lost, that we mentioned the Big 12, Oklahoma State didn't even play this week and got to move up a little bit in the AP poll. They sit at number 11 right now in the AP poll and number 12 in the coaches poll. So we know that, as I've been saying, this is a chance for Oklahoma State to come out and just dominate, which I really think they're going to do on Saturday. But on the flip side of the coin, is there a little bit more pressure now? I know that everyone's like, AP poll, we don't care about the rankings, but I'm telling we know that players pay attention to rankings. Sorry, but they just do. It's just human nature. When they look at that AP poll and say, we're number 11 in the country, is there a little bit more pressure on that to say we are knocking on the door of being a top 10 team right now at the start of this season, and we got to go out and just dominate?
No, I would argue if they are looking at the polls that they're actually saying we should be higher. I don't think there's necessarily pressure right now until it's you're in the top 5. Then maybe you can start arguing pressure. But I mean, right now you can't say, there's pressure when you have teams like Texas and Oklahoma ahead of you, or a Baylor that's creeping up there. And here's the reality as well: you're scheduled to play West Virginia next week, 2:30 kickoff. We found out, and they just blew the doors off of their first opponent. So there, you can't take the approach of we're tightening up because we're 11th. If anything, you need to be taking the approach of, hey, we're better than this. We're going to show them and prove to them, especially with the gauntlet ahead of the Big 12.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case. Oklahoma State on their opener in the Big 12 with West Virginia. Official game time is 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, September 26th, and that game will be on ABC or ESPN there, whichever one they get. Either way, they got another good slot there, and that will be on the 26th. When we come back, talk about K-State, because they also decided to go ahead and just lose in week 1 too. That's next.
There's a scarecrow in the garden that looks like Lucifer. I've been reading Revelation with my bare feet in the blue. I know every single fence post, every rock to go around. I've been staring at
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist here on Monday. So we get your week started off on the right foot. Kansas State did not get started off on the right foot. They dropped their first game to Arkansas State 35-31. Closer, I mean, I guess if you're Arkansas State, you look at what happened to Iowa State and you go, I guess we scored more there, so that's a plus. But to losing to Arkansas State, that's a big yikes. I have to say, though, Jason, watching that game, for the most part of what I watched, Jonathan Adams, the receiver there, this is, and here's the thing, this is the perk of these different schedules that we've got going on, these condensed schedules, is that these teams like Arkansas State that are getting to play a K-State and get a televised game. A guy like Jonathan Adams, who went insane and had 8 catches, 98 yards, and 3 scores, is going to get a lot more eyes put on him immediately, and that's what I love for some of these players who may, in other ways, be passed over a little bit. But I'm not sure how much you watched this game. There was one touchdown he made in the end zone at the front of the pylon that was just a grown man score. ASU looked like they were inspired and K-State not so much, but the fact that we had two Big 12 teams, besides Kansas, obviously I don't even mention them, go down, and K-State to Arkansas State, again, that was just one of those you're like, seriously, that really just happened, and it was unfortunate for the Wildcats.
Well, and it's interesting because, Arkansas State's been a program over the last couple of years that's been one of those that is sneaky. You got to be careful with them. And again, this is a case where I think they were one of the teams that definitely had already played a game, so might have had that benefit of kind of knocking the rust off. Where Kansas State, again, they've been another one of those programs that's dealt with constant the fluctuation of shutting down practice because of outbreaks and stuff like that. But I will say this, I'm not surprised. Again, Arkansas State is a program the last couple of years that you feel like they've been really close to pulling some upsets or have some upsets, but maybe not of the magnitude that you think. So I wasn't surprised. I actually, was going into that game, I was like, Kansas State's going to have to take this team seriously. It was the one that was more shocking to me was Louisiana over Iowa State. But Arkansas State is a program that's been on the rise, in the group of five over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt. And they really came to play and looked like they were definitely ready to go. Texas Tech, as you mentioned, just a 2-point win over Houston Baptist, 35-33. Coastal Carolina came into Kansas at 9 p.m. and won 38-23.
Correction, 9:20 p.m.
9:20 p.m.
That's when it officially got kicked off. Was 9:20.
Sounds about right.
I think ultimately it ended 12:30 Central Time. So like technically,
did you watch?
No, I actually didn't get to watch much of any sports this weekend. Spending time with the wife, got to spend a couple little bit playing with video games with friends, but doing yard work, doing housework, doing chores and all that, so I didn't get to watch. But I saw some of the people that I follow that cover KU tweet out at I think it was 12:35 or something like that. That the game just went final. I'm just like, oh. God, I would hate to be a beat writer and having to cover a program that bad until 1 a.m.
Yeah. If in case anyone didn't know by now, any sport, really anywhere that has a start time, you can give it about a 15 to 20 minute window after that said time when it's actually going to start. That's the case with Kansas, as you said. I also read somewhere that their starting quarterback, Kansas actually spelled his name wrong on his jersey. Yeah, they said that was.
Well, I do know when they did the pregame announcements for starters, they actually on the jumbotron and whatnot, they actually listed both of their quarterbacks. So even at pregame, they didn't know who their starting quarterback was. As East Carolina won't, or Central Coastal Carolina won't know who our starting quarterback is. But, 5 minutes before game time, it's like, oh, come on, Les Miles, come on.
Thomas McVitie. Does that sound right? Yeah, Thomas McVitie is the starting quarterback for Kansas. And, yeah, they had his name spelled wrong on his jersey when he came out and into that game. That was as you know, the best Kansas moment of the weekend. I saw one of my favorite tweets over the weekend about Kansas was someone said, hey, Kansas lost to Carolina today. And they said, oh, North or South? They said, you won't believe this one. Coastal Carolina came in and got it done. So not a huge surprise there. As you mentioned, other in the Big 12, West Virginia dominated in their ball game. There was really no issue there. Oklahoma won 48-0 over Missouri State. So those that did pay the pay-per-view price got to see a 48-0, $60 worth there. Victory. West Virginia won 56-10 over Eastern Kentucky. So that's really, besides a couple of the other games in the ACC, that's really about it that was worth watching this weekend. Clemson, easy victory over Wake Forest, and so on down the list. So the other interesting, TCU was postponed, we know. Looking into more Oklahoma State stuff this weekend, by the way, we did actually have a score and a match this weekend. As we were talking on Friday, after the Lady Cowgirls soccer team got their game against Oklahoma postponed, thanks a lot to the Sooners, Oklahoma State said, why not? Let's just go play Kansas State. And they did, played them on Saturday in Manhattan and won 3-0. Gracie Oakham and a couple others scoring goals. I mean, I feel like after hearing what I have heard from OSU's soccer team last year when they won the Big 12, the women's soccer team, this was kind of a picking up where they left off situation, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the video of the goal?
I actually haven't yet. No.
Oh man, it was such a beautiful touch goal. Beat the defender and literally had to just touch it. It was one of those where you had to touch it over the goalkeeper, but keep it high enough to get over, but low enough to where it didn't go clear the net, and just dropped it right onto the line and into the goal for a goal. It was one of those goals that is so to me it's always underappreciated, because you have to have the perfect amount of touch to get it to where the goalkeeper can't block it, but you don't airmail it over the net as well.
Yeah, no, it sounds about as tough as it gets in soccer, and yeah, definitely one to check out if you haven't. Just another update as far as Stillwater. It is sad news, as you're aware of, but it's unfortunate news. The high school game against Bixby this Friday has already been canceled.
All Stillwater High sports for the week have been canceled.
Yeah.
That's I've been kind of distracted for the past 20 minutes because Jimmy's actually out there right now over at the Stillwater Public School building. There is a large gathering of people, it looks like mostly athletes, according to Jimmy's tweets, kind of led by the football team, kind of protesting with chants of let us play and whatnot. So that's going on right now, just down the road from the radio station as well. And I'm not sure how long, looking at Jimmy's tweets, they've been going for at least about 30 minutes. They might have kind of funneled down there after their distance learning classes got over this afternoon. But I mean, it's a mix of athletes, parents, all out there at the SPS building right now, kind of protesting the cancellations. Again, it's cancellation of not just the football game Friday night, which I had a feeling. I actually, Tim the mailman asked me this weekend. I'm like, because if it were a district game, I think they would have played. But because all these games will not have an impact of them getting to the playoff or their playoff positioning, I think that's why they went with, because there's a stipulation now that the county's technically COVID red, that if that the school board could make the decision if it were to impact the forfeiture of a playoff game or district game, then they could revisit it and discuss whether or not they would cancel those games. But because these are not going to have technically an impact in the playoffs, apparently that's why they've gone ahead and canceled at least the football one. I know for a fact it is a non-district game. So, but obviously that was also supposed to be a marquee game this weekend. A rematch of the past two state title games. And as I told Woodruff on the show, the pregame show on Friday, that this was going to be the biggest test for Stillwater High football, and get a very young quarterback kind of that hot seat in preparation for maybe having another state title rematch with Bixby.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand too, like you said, that we are the Payne County's in the red zone right now, and that's not good. But at the same time, I can also get the frustration from the players. Last report I saw was that the team is COVID free, based off of latest testing.
Yeah,
and
Jimmy said. Yeah. Per Tucker Barnard himself, that there's nobody on the team that has COVID. Yeah,
that's frustrating. I mean, because especially if you've got that going on, and your team is doing the right thing, and they're adhering to the guidelines and taking it serious to where they have no cases, and you end up going into a Friday where nobody has COVID and you can't play, right? So I can understand the frustration there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Stillwater had fans in the stands, right, for their first home game?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And for the most part, at least in the student section and the first couple of rows of the adult section that I could see, everyone was wearing masks, was social distancing, doing the proper things. The belief was that they would, before canceling a game, they would even consider basically banning fans. Just play
that's what I was
without
say.
fans before canceling. So I'm not sure. I know I haven't had the opportunity to read Jimmy's story yet. He pumped it out about an hour and a half ago now. Should be on the News Press website with comments from Tucker. I'm going to be curious to see what he has to say, because I'm sure they probably tried to get some input from him. Whether it's do you think we can do it with no fans? Do we, how can we do it to where it's safe for everyone? But that's the thing we got to keep in mind. And I know people keep saying, well, the hot spots right now are OSU students and whatnot. And that's fair. But you know what OSU students do? They still go to Walmart. They still go to restaurants. They still interact with the community. So there is the potential. And that's what I think the school board is keeping aware of, is that there is that potential in the town of Stillwater because of those people because we don't know if they're actually adhering, and obviously there's been plenty of video to prove that the college kids aren't necessarily adhering to masks and social distancing, stuff like that.
Well, that's why my argument was going to be initially, couldn't they just play this game without fans? I mean, right. and not allow any outside sources.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was something that was discussed. Again, as far as I knew, what I was told last week is they would consider that before cancellation. Yeah. So my assumption would be that they did, and for all we know, maybe Bixby, maybe they had a little input as well. We don't know, but I'm assuming, although as far as I know, Payne County is one of the biggest. I think it's the only red county, I think, in COVID, at least as far as I know. But yeah, I need to read Jimmy's story to get a better feel for what Tucker had to say, because obviously both AD and the football coach, he probably had a lot of people talking to him with the school board to figure out what approaches they should take.
Yeah, because I'd be curious what the reasoning would be. Let's go to the phone line real quick here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
They had the football game last year, and it had some fans in the stands. If they can do it last week, they can do it this week also, or whenever. Some of those numbers, we've only had in Payne County, and be on the Stillwater paper, we've had 3 deaths in the whole county. 3 deaths, and they may have been other things related, but you're putting down a whole school. Here's what I do not understand, and I will be at the board meeting tomorrow night. I do not understand how all the surrounding towns can have in-school sessions except Stillwater. Can you answer that question? Why are they getting to have school and we aren't? Nobody knows the answer.
Well, I think your question was surrounding towns. Is that correct?
In Payne County, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All of them. They're in school.
Yeah. It's because they are focusing on when they look at numbers of cases. I have to go back to look at the exact number. I think right now the average is, I think, 56. Does that sound right, Jason? 56 new cases per day, I believe.
Yeah. Well, 56 per 100,000.
Yeah, 100,000. Yeah. So they're going off that number and looking at, I'm sure, comparing numbers to surrounding areas, and the fact that Stillwater's is bigger than everyone else, is higher than everyone else. They're just going to go straight off that and say, well, we can't have school, we can't have football, whatever.
Well, I think personally that's a lot of garbage, because some of those numbers are getting fluffed, and our kids want to be in school. There's all kinds of, we're intelligent enough. We can take precautions to take care of that. I've talked to one grandmother. She said my grandson goes to one of these other schools, and she said he goes in, he wears his mask, he gets in the school, in his class, in his desk. We're talking elementary, and then as the officer stays in his desk, he can take his mask off. But if he gets up, he's got to put the mask on. And I said, that's a nice idea. We're talking elementary kids.
Yeah, no, I think I understand the level of frustration.
The problem with Stillwater, we've got the OSU numbers to contend with. Mm-hmm. But if you watch the news, the sororities and fraternities all over the nation are having problems because they're not practicing what they need to do. We can do that. We can practice what's safe.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that part of it, and I don't know if this would ever be, said that it's part of it, but the fact that Payne County is in the red zone, and whatever you want to call it there, if they went ahead and said, we're sitting here and we can do this football game while we're in this situation, I'm afraid there's a lot of people that sitting in decision-making chairs right now are thinking to themselves, how would that look from anybody's standpoint? Would we be able to go forward with having sports, having school, doing all this stuff while we're one of the hottest spots around at the moment? And I mean, I'm afraid that right there, and some of it could be optics, but I think some of that right there plays into it. I really do.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts, but I also believe that some of those things the numbers are fluff. That means that they are set up and exaggerated to a point. I know that OSU doesn't help any because it's right here, but we can take care of this. Our kids need to be in school. They need to be in school. Mm-hmm. The teachers need to be in school. This learning through the internet, the computer, Zoom or whatever, that is causing problems. All kids don't have that stuff. So they must be doing without. Yeah. Let's say, well, we've got meals going out to these people that are normally getting free meals. But what about when the parents are working and the kids, how did they go get the meal? They're not driving yet. How did they go get that free meal? We are doing an injustice to our students in this system. And if the other surrounding towns can do it, we can too. That's what I believe.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the phone call.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I understand it's an extremely tough, touchy subject, which I get. Like, that's what I'm saying, Jason, is that and that's why I want to know more of the story of what the decision-making was when it came to, well, we did say at one point that we would consider no fans before canceling. Well, okay, was that really considered? Like, what was the ultimate reason of we still don't think this is safe enough right now?
Yeah, and obviously the callers also focusing in on in teaching, classing as well. I would say to that I understand the argument from Mark Moore, the fact that it's slightly different from Stillwater, because the reality is Stillwater has a lot more kids and teachers across their entire school district than a Perry or a Perkins or a Morrison and stuff like that. So they have more people interacting and that they're taking care of. So I can understand his argument there in when you're comparing it to some of these other school districts, because the reality is, Perry has a couple thousand people in the entire town where Stillwater has 50,000.
Right. No, and I mean, there's significant differences, and look, I've been behind this the entire time. I've been behind that kids should be back in in-person learning, and that we're learning how to take the proper precautions, because there are people, like the caller said, that when they look into Stillwater High School or the elementary school, whatever, when everyone in there is doing their job and they're wearing the masks and they're social distancing and all this stuff, and everything seems to be trending in the right direction, at least for them, then they get this news, well, now we can't even play football, and now we're going to be out of sports for a week. Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. I completely get it.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's been the argument for the last 2 weeks. Is like, okay, if they're not in school, how are they able to do athletics over the past 2 weeks? And now, obviously, they have shut it down now that it's red, because that's one argument that Tom had made a couple weeks to me. Is like, if they're shut down, if they're not teaching in person, how are they allowed to still play? So yeah, I mean and that's what I've been saying, whether it's college, high school. It's every week's going to be fluid. I mean, again, they announced this today. Tomorrow they could come out after their school board meeting and change it. We don't know. I mean, but that's the reality of this pandemic, is nobody knows day to day what's going on.
Yeah, that has been the case pretty much this entire time. When we come back, speaking of someone that doesn't know what's going on, how about the Big Ten? Where in the heck are they? Reports coming out today that they actually may be voting to reinstate the football season as early as today. We'll talk about that to round out hour number 1 next.
Too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been too long.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Rounding out hour number 1 here, Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist hanging out on a Monday. There was reports over the weekend that coming up very, very shortly, the Big Ten was looking to reinstate the football season. And I immediately thought to myself, yeah, I've heard that one before. Well, coming into today, Dan Patrick, who has emerged as the Big Ten insider, has disputed reports that a lot of college football insiders put out this weekend that the Big Ten is planning on having their presidents vote, and then on top of that, everyone's going to be voting unanimously and everyone wants to play football. That was the report from a lot of insiders this weekend. Dan Patrick comes on the show today and says, no, actually that's not the case. They are going to vote, and it looks like they're going to reinstate it, but there are still a number of schools that will not play. He said they're going to vote today. Michigan probably not going to play. Michigan State not going to play. Maryland probably won't play. So, but you're going to get Nebraska, Iowa, Purdue, Indiana, Ohio State, Wisconsin that all want to play but may not be able to. Jason, could you see a scenario? Dude, first of all, would you ever imagine a scenario where the Big Ten actually says, yes, we're going to have football, and Michigan says, no, we're still not going to do it?
It's not going to happen. Brett Murphy has also tweeted out this morning that it'll be unanimous one way or the other. And then about 45 minutes ago, retweeted a quote from the Wisconsin chancellor who said, quote, I will say we're all going to move together in the Big Ten. We're all going to play or not if we possibly can. This isn't going to be a school-by-school thing. So from the reports coming out today, this morning, now this afternoon, is they're going to make everyone play if they vote to play.
Wow. In your mind, is that the way to go? Or should all these schools be able to say yes or no, like they seem to want to?
I don't know. Well, because, I mean, in reality, you look at the Big 12, we don't, from things I've heard, is it wasn't unanimous. And obviously, so those presidents who said that they didn't want to obviously are still going forward. So my assumption would be, if you hit that threshold, the 60% or whatever that the Big Ten does for a majority vote, that you would have to, because it was voted on by the, it's a democracy. We live in a democracy type of thing.
Oh, we do?
I would assume they would have to.
Oh, we live in a democracy?
Oh, there's times I question that, yes.
Yeah, everywhere. But the thing is, if Michigan had said, we're not going to do it, okay, if that had been the case, that president would have been, I mean, he'd be gone. Give him a year or whatever, he'd be out of there. Like, there's no, I don't know, I think the University of Michigan might, erupt into this riot situation if they ended. Now, look, not saying that they're a threat in the Big Ten all that much this year anyways, but just for the fact of Michigan having football, or at least being allowed to, and them saying, nah, we're not going to do it, that would probably cause a little bit of unrest within that university. But we're still waiting on word that, again, that could possibly happen today. One thing I have read, too, in reports is Kevin Warren, who, I'll admit it, I mean, I ripped him a bunch of times and felt like he deserved it, apparently has actually been one of the main cogs in spearheading this return. And I think a lot of this has to do with, we've read too, they've got new medical advances ready to go. They feel like it's something that can be done with all of that involved with the coronavirus. What they're trying to avoid is sitting on the sideline while the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC and the Sun Belt, and you go down the list of everyone that's playing right now, is going to be doing the same thing. But the Big Ten will probably do it on a better level because of everything, all the resources they have and all of the availabilities that are there for them. That's why you get players looking at what happened this week, and you see, okay, over the weekend, Sun Belt teams were able to play, and we're over here in the Big Ten and not being able to play. Like, the conference realizes they have the resources, they have the ability, and probably are looking back on this saying, we probably should have waited, right? That's what I've said this whole time. If anything, they say, we should have given it another week or two before we made our decision, because now we're sitting here on September 14th, and it's looking like we may actually get started in a month.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I've been saying, I'm not going to believe one way or another until the day actually comes. Well, whether they actually get to play or they don't end up playing.
Because we keep getting so much back and forth on the same day. Yeah. On the same day. You know, we start off in the morning with this is going to happen, and they're ready to do it. And then by the afternoon, it's, well, actually, you know, we've seen that the entire time. So I don't think anybody really understands where the Big Ten sits, because over the weekend, too, I saw that they said, well, we want to get back to play, but the report was the Big Ten needs another couple of days to think about and decide. I'm like, what are you thinking about and deciding on? At this point, it's either a yes or no situation, and you come out and say it. There's no more, let's take a couple more days to think. No, they've had the time and ability to look at what's gone on in college football since it started and address by everything that they've given, all the data, all the information that they have. They should be able to make a decision right now, and hopefully that is the case. So give your, I know you say it'll happen if you'll wait until it happens, but give your best guess. Yes or no, the Big Ten has a season.
I don't know. Again, I think whatever happens, it will be unanimous, though. I think, even if, again, like you mentioned, Maryland and Rutgers and Michigan not wanting to play, they'll be forced to play. I think that's the one thing is I think if they do play, it will be everyone. And that'll be the interesting thing that Warren has to approach is if there is pushback from some of those programs or those presidents that voted against, because then at that point, then you're literally not abiding by the vote of the conference, and what can the conference do at that point?
Well, that's going to be their main argument back. Their pushback is, hey, we voted on this. Like, we decided. Why are we having to come back and talk about it? That's what some presidents and maybe even Michigan's will argue, and that's unfortunate. But I'm going to go on the side that I think it's going to happen. They'll probably vote in. It looked like initially it was the October 10th date. It's probably going to be pushed back a week around that October 17th date to where they can get 9 games in, and their Big Ten championship game would actually be ending a day before the final playoff is revealed. That way, Ohio State, if they did go 9-0, would have a legitimate, at least for some people's mind, have a legitimate case to make the college football playoff. So all that's going to be taking place at the very last minute.
Yeah, and I know we need to get to the top of the hour break. When we come back, I want to talk some more on the Stillwater High sports because I just read through Jimmy's story, and there's some head scratchers from that I want to get your take on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, and we'll also break down Week 1 of the NFL. That's all coming up in hour number 2 of the Afternoon Sports Drive next. Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Before we dive into our NFL coverage after Week 1, Jason's going to break in some more of the news regarding Stillwater High School canceling their Friday night game against Bixby, and all the other extracurricular activities canceled this week as well. What do you got, Jason?
Well, and reading through Jimmy's story on the News Press website, it's interesting that from what it sounds like, it's only games that are being canceled. Because a quote from Tucker Barnard says that they're still planning on practicing this week, which then begs the question: if they're going to be allowed to practice, why can't they then play the game?
That's the thing I don't understand, and what it makes me think is this having to do more with Bixby, possibly? I mean, is there something that we're not hearing in terms of did Bixby have some sort of a spread go on their team? All it takes is one? Is there one positive case?
And again, SPS is announcing that it's in accordance with the red level in the county. Like they actually released a press release stating that in accordance to with its safety protocols, they have canceled all athletic and extracurricular events for this week,
except practice.
Except practice, apparently, somehow. That's what confuses me is, like, if they're going to be allowed to practice, why not just continue with the game? And and here's the other thing with softball. I got confirmation from Jimmy's story that all 3 of the softball games this week, it was supposed to be including a doubleheader tomorrow at Bartlesville, not even in Stillwater. All 3 games are district games. So that does actually have an impact if they're not able to reschedule those, and how that might impact the softball team when it comes to position seeding, postseason seeding, and stuff like that as well. So if they're not able to get those games in, but people, I've seen some people argue is like, well, then what about having switching like the football game, for example, to playing at Bixby? And again, I don't know if Jimmy asked those questions. It's not mentioned in the story, but it basically looks like, based on the release from the SPS, is that they just decided because it's red and the protocol is to shut down everything, we're going to shut down everything. And I will say, I was told by somebody who lives in Perkins that, like with Perkins Tryon, if they were to switch to distance learning, they would shut down everything as well. Again, to me, it goes back to then it's Stillwater High for the past 2 weeks. They've been continuing to play sports while effectively shut down while doing distance learning. Why suddenly now, just because it's red? Which I think goes back to the argument that the caller was making.
Oh, it's exactly right what she said, and people understand now my argument of more. This is an optics thing. I feel like it is. Like, you're getting Stillwater Public Schools saying people are going to look at this and say, "Oh my gosh, it's a red county. We have a high school in there. There's no way they can be playing football and be in high school and do all this stuff." And it's like, we need to dive more into why it is the red county. We've already said. We already know it's not a brain fart here. It's Oklahoma State University being in the same town. But if you're saying that we have to cancel everything because of protocol, how does practice not fall into everything?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I need, and that's why I can understand their protests right now. They're out there looking for answers. It's like, they deserve it, because you've got your team, and I've read some of the story just now too, and they're saying, "Oh, we're gonna, coach, we're gonna take this week to focus on us and just kind of work on things." At a college level, it's one thing to have a game canceled or postponed like Oklahoma State did because we know it's going to happen again, or at least scheduled to. When you get the word right here that the most anticipated game in a long time right here in Stillwater is now canceled, I'm sorry, but for 16 to 17, 15-year-old kids, that's a crusher. That's a one right there where you're like, I'm just not, like, the motivation's gone. I'm going to have to sit here another week. We probably won't get to play this game. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous to take that away from those kids right now. And I feel for them, and I hope they can get some sort of answer. I think, like that caller said, they have the city council meeting tomorrow. Look, I'm telling you.
The school board
meeting. I'm sorry. Yeah. There's going to be plenty of public support coming in there and demanding why this is the case. And I really hope they're able to find some answers, because this is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and again, what confuses me the most is the fact that they're going to be allowed to continue to practice, at least according to that quote from Tucker Barnard.
Yeah, it's like the Big Ten all over again.
Yeah, so it's like if they're practicing, why can't they play?
Yeah.
Like, take the approach of, no fans in the stands, stuff like that. But here's the problem, and I will say this. If they were to play the game and there was no fans, they'd be complaining about that too. Let's be honest.
Right, but at least if right now, that seems to be the next best thing, right? Is that we
right.
If we see that they're saying this was actually an option we considered, was we want to have no fans and play before we cancel a game. Well, I mean, if that's the case, how seriously was that considered? I feel like it wasn't all that much, because there's no reason at this point. I get it. We're in a red county, all that. But you're telling me we couldn't have an empty stadium and get everybody in there who we know for a fact that Stillwater, their high school football team, is COVID-free. It's in there. We already know. You're telling me we couldn't go in there and play a football game? I mean, it's a complete overreach to me. I think that this decision is trying to make too many people from the outside looking in happy. Their opinions probably don't matter as much, and yet we have to cater to that, and I hate it. I hate it for those students. I hate it for everybody involved, and I hope they get answers quick.
Oh, and I feel bad for, and I know some people will dismiss this. I feel bad for the school district and them having to make the decision, because the reality, this decision shouldn't have been made by them. It should have been made by the OSSAA, who said, hey, you know what, instead of districts get to choose, we're going to have a blanket. If you hit red, you have to shut down.
Right.
Like that's been the problem, is there's been no leadership even at the highest level, and that's been part of the problem. Is if there was a blanket OSSAA saying, you know what, if you reach this level, then you have to shut down, instead of just basically putting the onus on the school districts, it's not fair to them either.
Yeah, no, I think that was something we saw. The blame was passed initially, right? OSSA immediately said, well, everyone's for themselves here in this situation because we don't want the responsibility, and we knew that was a bad call from the beginning.
Right, and I think it stems back from March, when they had the big reaction from them having to shut down the state basketball tournament, and so they decided, well, we don't want to be the bad guys again, so we'll just make the school districts fend for themselves. Yeah,
no, it's a huge mess. I feel for these guys. I feel for everybody involved, because this should not be happening right now, and it's really unfortunate. We'll continue to update when we get updates. I know that just looking through some of Jimmy's stuff there, as you were talking about, the protest is still continuing. You got people out there outside the school district demanding answers. So let's look at some football that did happen this weekend. This was a really, I thought, entertaining kickoff in a really strange time. The only other place with fans besides Arrowhead Stadium was in Jacksonville in the NFL this weekend, out of all places. And it might as well. I mean, they actually got to see a win, which was probably surprising to them. But other than that,
all three of them.
Yeah, all three of them. Yeah, it was kind of strange to see. And yeah, they actually got to see a victory. It was cool. But the first thing that stuck out to me, and I watched pretty much the entirety of this one, was Cam Newton was, I think, one of the most anticipated starts coming into this weekend with his new team, the Patriots. And I got to tell you, he looked healthy. He looked really good, and I'm glad he did, because I've been singing Cam's praises since we found out he was going to the Patriots. I said he's going to look fresh, he's going to look like old Cam, and I'm telling you, they were running quarterback sneaks, they were running pitch option, they were giving him opportunities to get into the end zone from the goal line, short distance, and he was taking hits, he was delivering them. The arm looked pretty good. He didn't even need to throw all that much against Miami, but he came away with the victory. I don't know how much you saw of it, Jason, but Cam, he looked like old-fashioned Cam, and I'm here for it.
A couple of rushing touchdowns. I felt that was appropriate, considering the former quarterback there. But I also found it interesting, the guy that I told you to avoid on Friday, literally the first pass of the Cam Newton era is dropped by Julian Edelman.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me.
like how appropriate is that? I mean, come on. like he's supposed to be the only option there.
Well,
and he drops the first pass.
Yeah, and I was bummed to see it, because, and I'll give him a little leeway, because he was drilled from behind, but it's Julian Edelman. He should be holding on to that ball. And I thought to myself, oh, please no. Don't tell me that's going to be, what's going to happen this year. And when Cam did throw, I think he ended up throwing 5 balls to Edelman, or at least he caught 5. And it was an average day. So, but at the same time, it wasn't just Cam rushing the ball. I mean, Sony Michel was getting touches. They were pounding and grounding that ball up the throats of the Miami Dolphins, and all of a sudden you've got, and that's kind of the theme that I took away from this Sunday. More teams that have quarterbacks that can sling it at any point in any game are running the football and establishing a run and are not afraid to go to it over and over and over. And that's what we saw with the Patriots. And I got to say, I really think Cam Newton looked about as good as I could have expected. Now, there are going to be tougher tests down the line, and he is going to end up having to throw the ball more. But when that time comes, as a Pats fan, I would be fairly excited and fairly optimistic. It was cool to see him in a new uniform and with a new team. As for the Dolphins, real quick.
I was just going to say real quick though, what I also found fascinating, talking about those teams deciding to run maybe a little bit more. The crazy stat I saw, the fact that
I know what you're going to say. Say it.
Just double checking. Yeah, that only one running back eclipsed 100 yards this week so far. Obviously, we got 3 games tonight, but in week 1, only one running back. And it was the first running back taken in this past year's draft.
And by the way, his yards after contact were more than any running back had on the ground this week. It was awesome. He absolutely dominated. Yeah. And, so he set the tone. But, the Chiefs were one, but other teams followed, and we're going to run this football all day.
Yeah.
But the Dolphins.
And again, I wonder how much of it is that rust. The timing of the pass and because obviously a guy like Demarcus Robinson who's made some good plays, the first 2 passes to him he just clang. I mean, they were horrendous looking from his part. So, and then again, you see a Julian Edelman drop a pass. Maybe that's that until they get comfortable again. Because that's the thing is, what this weekend has shown me is maybe you do need 1 or 2 preseason games, because this was some ugly football around the league this weekend.
Yeah, I'd say there was some defensively. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of good tackling though, and all that, and we'll get to it. But offensively, yeah. And then when you look at preseason, I would say we definitely need some sort of, and I don't know if I'd go as far to say an actual preseason game that we need. I can see the argument for it, but let's get one of these inter-squad practice. Let's get a practice against another team that we can stop and start when we want and address things, but go full contact and all that. But at the same time, let's make sure our starters, let's still give them just a quarter or 2, and then that's it to kind of get their feet underneath them. So I think that had something to play into it. But the running backs, you're right. They were the benefactors.
That's why I said 1 or 2 games. I think we don't need 4 preseason games. I've never agreed with that. But I think 1 or 2. I think maybe could have made some of the play this weekend. Again, even with the Chiefs, they started flat. They looked flat in that game on Thursday at times. Maybe those 1 or 2 preseason games would have helped kind of knock the rust off a little bit.
Yeah, the Dolphins on the other side of that game, they were interesting to watch. I mean, Fitzpatrick, he's going to be Fitzpatrick, and he ran a touchdown in, and things were looking okay at that time, but obviously they couldn't hold off the Pats towards the end. They found a little bit of a running game with Jordan Howard. Now, they had 2 or 3 different backs switching in and out, so it's still kind of a jumble back there. But the question is, after this game, and I know it's Patriots, but the question is, after this game, how long until Tua needs to be unleashed? Because I really think at some point, unless the Dolphins can get off to, and then some people say, well, this is why they would put Tua in, but think about it. If they were able to get off to an 0-5 start or something like that, then maybe you're like, we might be able to actually get a better pick than we thought coming into next year. But do you see, and I know I asked you this before the season started, but after week 1, do you see Fitzmagic ending the season as the quarterback with the Dolphins, or is Tua at some point going to have a chance to take over?
I mean, I think it'll be possible for that Fitzpatrick stays. Here's the thing. I'm looking at some of the stats, why I would be leery to put 2 in there. When you look at your second leading receiver had 7 targets and only 2 catches.
Yeah, and
your leading rusher had 9 carries, for 40 yards.
Yeah.
Like they just were ineffective. And again, maybe a better quarterback changes that. But you look at the numbers right now, and you're looking and saying, man, I don't know if I want to risk somebody just coming off of a pretty wicked injury with the lack of talent to go with him.
Yeah, and Devontae Parker got hurt in that game. I think he ended up coming back, but he wasn't the same after that. And it definitely looked like, as I predicted a long time ago, regardless of what the Patriots were, and this was before they even thought about Cam Newton, regardless of what they were going to do at quarterback, I still thought they were going to take that division. Now, the Bills might end up standing in their way. I think it's going to be a fun matchup when that all comes around, but we will see. When we come back, probably the most anticipated matchup of Sunday, the Saints and the Bucks. We'll talk about that, but did it live up to the hype is the question. We'll answer that next.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, will begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Ooh-dee-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So ooh-dee-la-dee-do, yeah, come on, here we go, yeah, come on.
Here we go.
So put your best face on, everybody pretend you know this song. Everybody come hang, let's go out with a bang. I'm way too young to lie here forever. I'm way too old to try, so whatever, come hang, let's go out with a bang.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. Here on Mondays, we talk about the NFL. The Bucks and the Saints played in one of the afternoon games, a 3:25 game in New Orleans. And first of all, the best part about that game is that the over hit, which I thought for sure would happen at 47.5. Hope people took my advice on Friday, made a little bit of money. So that hit, that was great. The main thing you take away is we were looking at Cam Newton's performance, and he was going to be one of the hottest topics coming into today, but the next one was probably going to be, well, how did Tom Brady do? And he started off that game with a solid drive, and it looked like, wow. Tom, he rushes in the end zone for the score, and it's like, uh-oh. Oh, Tommy Brady, he's back. He's with the new team. Things are looking good. Here come the Saints. Now, the Saints on the other end, this is the thing. Did Tom Brady play bad? Yeah. Yeah, he looked really bad. Like, he looked like a 43-year-old quarterback. But did the Saints really play that great? And the answer is no. I didn't think they looked that great. I mean, the rushing attack was fine. You get Alvin Kamara doing his thing. But Drew Brees was not spectacular. 160 yards, couple of touchdowns. He only targeted Michael Thomas 5 times. He only targeted him 5 times, and they still got that victory. But on the other end with Brady, I mean, I think we all saw some of this coming at some point. I was pretty confident in that this team would be able to come out. I didn't think they'd win this first game, but be a little bit more competitive. Jason, were you surprised to see kind of the old man Tom Brady?
No, I've been literally telling people that. I was like, guys, just because he's in a new system with, quote, better players doesn't necessarily it's suddenly going to be he's a 25-year-old Tom Brady again. Like, he's still pushing 50, guys. Let's remember that. I think my favorite reaction from this game is the amount of memes of literally it was 2 images, different people, but with the same tagline. I could be doing that right now instead of Tom Brady. And one of them was Jameis Winston. The other one was Josh Rosen. Yeah, especially right after that pick 6.
Yeah, you had Jameis Winston sitting on the sideline for the Bucks, and you had Josh Rosen up in the stands with the rest of the practice squad. I saw that one too. I thought that was pretty good. But Tom Brady, I don't know. So this is what we're going to have to start doing. Okay, I thought about this earlier. Coming into these Mondays after football games, because inevitably there will be a team every single week where they're asking themselves, and fans are asking themselves, is it time to panic yet? And I know after week 1, that was one of the questions. So we're going to play, is it time to panic yet, with the Bucks after 1 week? And I would say, look at the opponent. And I also think that Tom Brady is going to have good games down the road this season. I don't think they're going to be these floundering performances like we saw yesterday, because there were a couple of really good throws that he made, but at the same time, the interceptions were bad. I mean, you look at the one that he did attempt to throw to Mike Evans, and you can maybe put some fault on Mike Evans for not running the route like he was supposed to, but the second one that was a pick six, that was just ugly. That was really, really bad. Gronk wasn't a factor. So I don't know if I'd say it's time to panic yet, but I'm verging there.
It's not, and I'll tell you why. Emphatically, it's not time to panic. Panthers, Broncos, Chargers. Those are your next three opponents. If you come out 0-4 after that, yeah, definitely time to panic. But you should easily come out of the first four games 3-1. If you go 2-2, maybe you're edging towards that panic button. But I mean, you've got easily two really bad teams in the Panthers, clearly, and the Chargers. Broncos, we'll see, with everything that they've lost, how that, we'll see them tonight. But right now, those to me are three bottom tier teams that you're going up against. He should be able to take care of them. So I'm saying don't panic yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there. There were some issues that stood out that definitely need to be addressed. And I thought it was pretty interesting today that Bruce Arians comes out and basically says, well, Tom didn't perform that well. I'm not really sure why. He was like
because he's 50.
Yeah, he said basically that he was surprised at Tom Brady's performance, and they broke down the interception, said he shouldn't have thrown it there. Like, that was a mistake. I wonder what Tom Brady's thinking about this. He's like, oh wow, okay, well, I guess that's how he feels about that. But he's right. I mean, Bruce Arians is right that Tom Brady has to be better, and you might be on to something. Maybe these upcoming games will be a perfect opportunity for him to work on some things. But what you never want to hear is what Troy Aikman was basically talking about late in the game yesterday when the Saints had it basically won already. He goes, the Bucs know it, but this is a time where they're working on some things right now. They kind of use this as an extended practice scrimmage. I'm like, ugh, they don't want to hear that in week one for any team, that you're still working on some things late in an actual game. So yeah, it was tough. I think Tom Brady has some things he needs to get on. And then you want a healthy Mike Evans, too. He did catch a touchdown, and it was his only catch of the game. But you want to see a healthy Mike Evans. I thought Chris Godwin, he was already on his way to what's going to be, I think, a fantastic season. He was exactly what we talked about, in the right spot for a mid-range thrower like Tom Brady is now. The running back spot, look, Jason, you remember when they signed Leonard Fournette, I went off on Bruce Arians for saying that Ronnie Jones, that he's going to be the guy and Leonard Fournette's not. I'm not admitting that I was wrong yet. I know he had a great game yesterday. I mean, good game. He looked solid at the running back spot, but I'm still saying Leonard Fournette needs to get back there in the backfield more often. But that's kind of what I took away from it. I think it was an interesting matchup, but at the same time, we do have to remember the Saints, they also have some things to work on. I'll tell you this, as a Chiefs fan, you might agree with this too. Those two teams that we just saw yesterday, wasn't really that nervous about if the Chiefs had to play either of them right now.
No, and honestly, just going back real quick, if you look at the NFC games yesterday, the only team right now I'd probably worried about would be the Seahawks.
Yeah,
but again,
that's exactly right.
But half of my brain's also saying, yeah, except for Chris Carson, there's a good chance he's going to get injured midseason anyway.
I sure hope not, but he has had that unfortunate injury bug follow him. Yeah.
And while we're talking NFL, I maybe we can do this to start a pity award that we give out each week as well, because while I'm not a big fan of him, I have a little bit of pity for Joe Burrow.
Oh yeah.
In his first career start, he finds out how rough the NFL is when it comes to kickers. He didn't even get a chance to go to overtime to try to have some dramatic win in his rookie debut because the kicker shanked it and then instantly blamed it on pulling a hamstring.
So with the Bengals, yeah, like you said, perfect ending in Bengals fashion. Shanks a chip shot.
Did I not say that on Friday?
Oh, yeah.
That the Bengals were going to bungle.
Oh, yeah.
They were going to be the bungles.
They were going to bungle and find a way. And I believe you and I had the Chargers in our picks there in that game, and Levi didn't. So we were definitely correct on that one. But what happened, as you said, Kicker shanks a chip shot, and immediately acts as if he's pulled the hammy or the calf or whatever. Now, do you buy that? Was he actually hurt, or was that just your? Because it was a little too convenient for me.
I don't know, because here's the thing is I couldn't tell which leg he was actually saying was injured.
He forgot.
Like, he was reaching down at both legs with both hands. Like, did you pull both hamstrings at the same time to miss it that bad?
You know, there used to be a time where, and I think we're past it now, but there used to be a time where some players you would see, and I've seen a lot of them covering high school sports and everything else, but some players, when they messed up in big-time situations, would immediately go to the injury. Well, then you would find out later on in the week, they're okay. And that became such a common thing to happen that everyone was like, yeah, come on. And it was the same reaction yesterday. That dude's not hurt. He just shanked an easy kick and screwed Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals out of their first victory, because I thought Joe played okay. I mean, the rushing touchdown was pretty good. It was cool to see A.J. Green back on the field. There was a kind of a ticky-tacky call there on A.J. Green, I thought a little bit on an offensive pass interference in the end zone, but it was cool to see him back. I mean, overall, from highlights you've seen or anything, did you think that obviously Joe Burrow has plenty to work on still, but not a terrible start, right, for the first game of the year or career for him?
Again, I think there's still the worry of establishing Joe Mix again. It wasn't impressive. Obviously, turned the ball over as well. I think what's promising is A.J. Green actually played.
I know, and stayed healthy.
5 catches.
Yeah.
He was the leading receiver. I think only with like 60 yards, but still, that's promising because that's everything we kind of thought Joe Burrow would be good if he has that stud wide receiver. So it kind of remains to be seen. And here's the thing we also have to keep in mind, because I said this on Friday, Chargers defense is really good. So what does maybe that's what the issues that the offense had for Cincinnati was just they went up against a really good defense, and maybe he can really start getting a better flow when he faces some of these more horrible teams. That remains to be seen, but so I'm not completely bailing on him yet. Again, like I said, I pity him because kickers, man, you have one job.
Yeah, you have one job. Yeah, they definitely should have at least tied the game and seen what Joe Burrow possibly could have done in overtime. 193 passing yards, 8 rushes, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Didn't throw for a touchdown, but did run for one, which was good to see, and only lost by 3 points to a, like you said, pretty salty Chargers defense. So I think there's a lot of upside there for Joe Burrow if A.J. Green and Joe Mixon can, in fact, both stay healthy. Let me give my pity. I also want to. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're going to give a pity award. Yeah, but it's a different team. So if you wanted to talk about.
Okay. Well, I was going to switch to a different team as well.
Okay, perfect.
So go ahead.
Well, I'll give you my pity award, and it goes to. I could have given it to a lot of people this week, but it goes to Matt Stafford. Because the Lions, oh my, and look, Matt Stafford was part of this issue, but he did get his team in a position to win. The Lions were up 23-6 to the Chicago Bears, and they allowed a 17-point comeback and lost that game to Mitch Trubisky and the Bears on the worst possible way, too. And I guess I would feel bad for DeAndre Swift at the same time. Maybe I split this pity award between DeAndre Swift and Matt Stafford. But Swift, rookie, comes in, gets a lot of chances, has a ball put in his hands. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better pass from Matt Stafford in the end zone, and he just completely botched it. One of the worst attempts at a catch I've ever seen, one of the worst drops I've ever seen, so I feel bad for them. But Matt Stafford, look, he disappeared in the fourth quarter. Didn't look great, but was able to get them in a position. I think the real thing we need to focus on with this game, Matt Patricia is so terrible at coaching. He is 9-23. You are kidding me with that record. And then he was asked about it later on and said, hey, is the fact that the fourth quarter can't be won by the Lions, does that have to do with anything you're coaching? He literally said no. No, I don't see it as anything that I'm doing. I'm like, dude, you are so unaware. But I felt really bad for the Lions because no way they should have given that up to Mitch Trubisky.
Detroit became only the fourth team in NFL history to lose after having a 17-point fourth quarter lead.
That's unbelievable.
Only the fourth team in history. Yeah. But I will say, maybe this is the game we look back and say, that's why Mitch Trubisky's the MVP of the season. Patricia let Mitch Trubisky look like an MVP in that game, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, he did. I mean, he threw for 3 touchdowns to almost 250 yards, and for that's true. Like, he started off the game, right, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is here we go again. He looked really bad. He was throwing behind guys. He almost got picked off. He was throwing behind guys. It didn't look good. It looked like classic Mitch Trubisky. But then when it came down to it towards the end, he was able to get his team in a position and ultimately get them to win. And, yeah, he's your MVP, obviously, right? No, it's crazy because at the same time, look, Nick Foles, I still believe he's still a better quarterback. Still believe that's the case. And it probably won't take long until Mitch Trubisky probably give him a couple more. He probably just bought himself a couple more weeks here with this victory. But Nick Foles is going to take over at some point. But for the Lions, man, as talented as Matt Stafford is and has been throughout his career, because he has been, he's just been one of those guys that has fallen to such a brutally terrible team, and unfortunately we'll probably never see him get the winning credit that he deserves. But yeah, that was probably where my pity one goes. I would say this too, Jason. There were 3 huge, and this goes back to the little sloppiness, but there were 3 huge drops yesterday that changed outcomes. It was DeAndre Swift, the Lions, T.Y. Hilton with the Colts, and Zach Ertz with the Eagles. Now, I say we should look at this Eagles game here because they ended.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. To start it off, I just want to give a shout out to Tim the Mailman, who is a fan of the AFC East leading Washington football team, or the NFC East. Because how is Washington, and again, the Giants get to play tonight.
That's right.
Tie them after week 1, but you not only do you beat the Eagles, but then Dallas goes on to beat Dallas, and obviously it clearly all they needed was a coaching change down there. But and here's the thing, Levi called it, but didn't back his own call. When he said that Washington defensive line, that's going to be hard to beat, but still pick the Eagles, he should have stuck with his guns. That defensive line, especially Chase Young, just made it miserable for Carson Wentz all day.
Well, they did. Now, I'll give them plenty of credit because they did. They grabbed 8 sacks, and that's impressive. But my goodness, Carson Wentz, there were multiple times that he was pressured or went down where he just didn't get rid of the football, and he had plenty of time to do so. There were times where he was not getting rid of the ball, whether it was a screenplay, whatever. And I'm like, Carson Wentz, come on.
Maybe it's because he was worried about throwing 2 more interceptions.
It could have been. But at the same time, I'm like, why? You could literally go down and break down plays where you would be teaching a junior high quarterback, hey, in this situation, you throw the ball in the dirt and we get back up and we get a new play. It was that going on. So while I'll admit that, yes, the Washington defensive line, they look pretty good. But Carson Wentz, he did not. And at the same time, I understand receivers are an issue. Alshon Jeffrey's out. Jalen Reagor was making some plays here and there. But Zach Ertz at the end, that's where I'm at. He had one of the worst. It was DeAndre Swift all over again. They both had some of the worst drops I've ever seen in the same week. And it was really, really tough. They were up 17-7 at the half and gave up 20 unanswered to lose to the Washington football team. Jason, that is unacceptable.
That's why he should have gone to my boy Dallas Goedert. I've been saying
he did plenty. Trust me.
Yeah, but I'm saying in crunch time he should have gone back.
Instead of Zach Ertz.
Yeah, but no. When you go 24 of 42 passing, that is not good. That is not good at all. And again, the highly anticipated Jalen Reagor, who Levi, wanted to take his first number 1 pick in most fantasy drafts. Just 1 catch. I mean, he's supposed to be the stud. Only targeted 4 times. He's supposed to be the future wide receiver. And again, I don't know if it's lingering from the injury thanks to Jalen Hurts, but you've got to get someone like Reagor more involved in that offense, especially if you're throwing the ball 42 times. It shouldn't just be 4 pass attempts to Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, no, there was a complete meltdown for the Eagles there in week 1, and I think Carson Wentz is certainly to blame for that. Look, I'm sorry, but and I know they signed him, But to Carson Wentz I'm talking about, but Jalen Hurts is in the background. I mean, I feel like you're going to obviously run with Carson Wentz, but there's going to become a point where something's going to have to be done there. If he doesn't step up at that position, you got somebody who just might get the shot to later on in this season. When we come back, yes, the Cowboys did indeed pull a Cowboys last night, and we'll talk about that to round out the show next. It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We're rounding out the show here on Monday. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. Dallas Cowboys fans. Yikes. It'll be a tough time to be a Dallas Cowboys fan right about now. After what happened last night, they get the spotlight. They get to christen SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles with the Rams. And I'm telling you, Jason, we made our picks Friday. That was the easiest pick of the week for me. Was L.A. L.A. at home was going to beat the Cowboys. Now, was it going to happen the way that it happened? I never would have thought that, but it did happen. Now, when you look at it, people are going to, and I've already seen, like we already know, right? First of all, before I dive into this, the worst part about the game, obviously, and for people around here, is that what happened to Blake Jarwin. That is really unfortunate. Towards Achilles, out for the season. And it was one of those, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you've seen it multiple times as well. When you see a non-contact play, right, and the guy's grabbing the back of his knee, yeah, you know it's bad. And that was unfortunate for Blake Jarwin.
Yeah, and kind of looking at the game, I actually had while I was playing video games last night, I had a friend watching the game while playing, and he was a Dallas Cowboys fan. And oh my goodness, it was hilarious listening to the last minute of the game, or the last couple minutes through him, especially when at one point early in the game, he's like, "Who's this Brown guy? Who's this running back for the Rams?" I'm like, Malcolm Brown? It's like even the Cowboys fans are like, how did we lose to Jared Goff, Malcolm Brown, and they only scored 20 points?
Yeah, well,
it's like, hey. Remember last year's game against Philadelphia with no wide receivers and you couldn't even score 14? Told you so.
The Rams were the other team I was going to mention that really stuck with the run again this week, and it paid off for them. Malcolm Brown was a huge part of that. What you have to do, though, is look at it. People, and I've seen plenty of Cowboys fans, okay, because you can separate Cowboys fans into those that make an excuse for why they lost, and then those that actually understand the real reason why they lost. So the ones that were making the excuse will go to the offensive pass interference penalty that was called, and we'll talk about that. But what really lost them the game, as anyone with a functioning brain can understand, is Mike McCarthy with one of the dumbest decisions we've seen to open up a Week 1 game on the road. He says on 4th and 3 with 11 minutes to go in the game where you could have tied the ball game with a chip shot field goal. No, let's go ahead and try to get the first down. Let's go and score and take the lead. What in the world are you thinking? The response I saw initially was, Jason Garrett would have kicked that football. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, that's really, really bad when you're bringing that up. Mike McCarthy, and I think it was, here's what I think it was. That Mike McCarthy was seeing that as an opportunity to prove himself to the Dallas fan base, to the team, and say, this year, we're going to be aggressive. And part of that was he thought, with the offense that I have out there, they're good enough to convert on a 4th and short. So I want our identity to be to our fan base and to our team that we're going to be aggressive and go for it. But I'm telling you what, when you do go for it and something like that happens where you don't get it and you run a terrible route, by the way, with your attempted receiver on the play, sorry, but that's going to come back to haunt you. That's when you look back at the end of the season and say, remember that? We could have started off 1-0.
Or even questioning, hey, why isn't it then where you use a halfback draw for 3 yards with the best running back in the league instead of on a 3rd and 6 play? But I digress. But no, I think the best response I saw was that going for it on 4th and 3 was such a Jerry Jones call because we want to show that we're not Jason Garrett anymore. We're not too conservative. It's like, yeah, but you're in field goal range with 11 minutes left. I get it. if you're on the, if it's a case where you're, in a playoff situation where you have to win, so it's week one. It's week one, guys.
Yeah.
Take the field goal. Heck, again, with all the money you dumped into that offense, you should be thinking, and if you're taking the approach of, well, we should be able to convert, it was like, okay, well, then kick the field goal and then go score on the next drive.
Yeah, well, exactly.
But you couldn't even do that.
And look, it's 11 minutes left in the game, and the Rams weren't exactly lighting it up on the other end against your defense. So you go and you get a stop. With that time being there, you take the time, you move on, and have trust that your defense is going to get you the ball back. And also, you have to take into consideration, hey, the Eagles just lost. I almost said the Redskins, but the Washington team, they're the only one that got the win so far. The Giants play tomorrow. Let's go ahead. Let's give ourselves a chance to win and be up in the division to start off the season. There were so many things that went into play there that I don't know how much McCarthy actually considered.
Like I told Tim, the mailman, all you need is 8 wins in that division to
That's
win.
right. That was one of them right there.
And that could have been one of them. And for the Washington team, they only need 7 more wins. And actually, Tim, the mailman, thinks it's only 5 more. He actually thinks that there's a chance that a 6-win team could win that division. And the way Dallas played, it's very possible. But no.
What did I preach to you, Jason, this entire offseason with the Cowboys? And you echoed it as well. Was that they're out of excuses. We blame the head coach. And the only thing that could hold them back this year would probably be at some point coaching again. Well, guess what? In week 1, but at the same time, Dak wasn't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. I know they lost a couple pieces on defense and they lost a couple pieces on the offensive line. But if Dak is going to be the guy as well that's going to demand $40+ million a year, well, he didn't play like that last night, right? He's got to own some of that too. All the way around, this is a bad Cowboys loss. The game they should have, if not won, at least been in at the very last second there.
Yeah, because this is a Rams team that's probably if they make the playoffs, in my mind, it's going to be as one of the last wild cards. Like to me, they are still they're still at the very best, the 3rd best in their division, maybe even the 4th best. Because obviously the 49ers are now scratching their heads saying, man, what happened? We were so good last year. Yeah. And then you realize that you had an easy schedule and Kyler Murray's actually improved at quarterback, where yours can't even hit your tight end out in the flat wide open without it getting him injured.
I was going to say, he can get him hurt though. Yeah, we got some games like that one that we'll definitely push tomorrow and get to. But yeah, and the other part about it with the Cowboys was the offensive pass interference call that was called at the end of the game, which you have your other side of the Cowboy fan base blaming as the excuse for why they lost, even though we know that's not the case. I think it was Michael Gallup goes up, right, and with Jalen Ramsey, slight look. And here's the thing. I'm never the guy that me is going to sit there and defend the Cowboys in any situation. But when I watched this, did it warrant a flag at that time? Right? I feel like there's referees that know in a situation like that, if it's almost too close to call in your mind, which I have to think that was the case, probably hold on and eat the flag at that point. And at least that's what I would have done. I think it was pretty ticky-tacky. I also think I think that Jalen Ramsey sold it too. You're going to disagree, but I think that Jalen Ramsey, the fact that he sold it was a big reason why they threw that flag.
Well, here's the thing. We literally saw this exact same play called an offensive pass interference in the Super Bowl. We literally saw that George Kittle straight arm out.
George Kittle's was a lot more exaggerated.
You are literally told as a wide receiver, as a receiver in the NFL, if you extend that arm, you will get called. And what did Gallup do? He extended that arm. Yeah. It's people questioning, what's offensive pass interference? That is extending your arm. You are literally told, probably in high school, if you extend that arm, you are going to get flagged. And that's exactly what he did in that situation.
He knew better, obviously, right, to probably extend it. And I think that because there was contact going down the field, there was enough to where I thought initially, okay, they're probably not going to call anything there because it looked like they were a little tangled up. I honestly wonder what would have happened, though, if Jalen Ramsey hadn't done the whole flop up in the air thing, like he got physically shoved back, which he didn't, okay? There was the arm in the way, but he didn't really get shoved back all that much. Had that not have happened, would there have been a flag? I think it's questionable.
See, and going back, and when I watched it, the interesting thing for me is I think if Gallup wouldn't have extended the arm and couldn't come down the ball, I think they would have actually called a defensive pass interference because Ramsey did kind of have that arm up.
Yeah.
So that, again, the whole thing is if you extend that arm, and he did, there's no denying that did he extend the arm?
He did. I feel like it wasn't.
Yes or no? Did he extend the arm?
Slightly he did. It wasn't as full on as George Kittle, though. I'll admit that. I mean, I stand by that. I need to put these side by side video, and show you. But I feel like George Kittle's was way more warranted than that one was. I think it was a bit of an extension. But if I'm the referee there, I'm probably swallowing that flag in that position.
Don't extend your arm, and you don't have to ask the official to swallow your whistle.
don't extend it at all. You're saying, right? Like just don't even. Yeah. I think it was. And look, I'll give Dak Prescott credit. That was a great throw. I mean, he was on the money, and that looked like that was going to get them in a perfect situation to get down and tie the game again, which I already should have done. But yeah, with that being the case, I can see it, and I'll say this too. and sorry, but there are some teams that deserve to have this happen to them. The Cowboys, I mean, seriously, come on, right? I feel like I was shocked that the call was actually made against Dallas. I'll say that. I was like, I can't believe the ref actually did that and threw that on the Cowboys. But yeah, it's going to be something that we look back on and say that's probably one of the more controversial calls, I think, to start off. But I'll tell you what, Jason, it is just fantastic to be sitting here and talking about whether a referee made the right or wrong call. And it feels normal, right?
Yeah. Before we wrap up, who you got in tonight's game?
Yeah. I think I picked. Let's see. I'm definitely going Tennessee. I feel like the Broncos don't really have much of a shot there, especially with no Von Miller. Derrick Henry is going to be a beast, at least hopefully. And you're still questionable a little bit on Ryan Tannehill, but we'll see if he comes out hot tonight for the other game. I got to go Steelers. I don't know how competitive it will be, but I'm really, really interested to see what Big Ben does now that he's healthy.
Yeah, same. I think that's going to be the biggest question mark tonight is seeing Big Ben back. Because he wants to still play another 3 to 4 years. If you come back from this injury and stink it up against the Giants, there's going to be a lot of people questioning if maybe it is time for him to hang it up like Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers should be.
Yeah, he's got a really good opportunity for a comeback game, right? Monday night against the Giants. Like that, you couldn't ask for much better opportunity for that. So, yeah, it'll be fun to watch a couple of games. The NFL for the week is not over. You get 2 Monday night games, a couple of days off, and then I guess you could maybe consider it over till Sunday if you look at what Thursday night's game is with the Browns and the Bengals. My goodness. We didn't even get a chance, by the way, to laugh at how bad Cleveland was again. Well, we'll do that tomorrow. We'll break down a few more games. They were laughably terrible. But that's going to do it for us here today on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Jason Elmquist. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll be back here tomorrow, the same place, same time. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday.